All right. I am live for another Mindset Monday over here. It's getting to be close to the end of some of your guys' work day. Of course, that all depends on the time zone you're coming from. And so we're going to start off the week in a good get a good kick start for the week with a little Mindset Monday. We talk about really data and research and challenging beliefs and challenging things that are out there. So I'll be on Rich Cooper's channel later today, 8 o'clock for his show. We're going to talk about the 5 love languages. And that's a great example, okay, of what I'm talking about here. Not challenging um, the idea or reality, okay, of what's being presented, and then going down a pathway of complete failure. Now, I don't want to get into the 5 love languages right now in detail because I'm going to do that at 8 o'clock. So jump on Rich's channel at 8 and come hang out with us. He's taking call-ins, chats, super chats, all that good stuff. So you guys can jump in there and we'll live the 5 love languages. Okay, for a long time, still now, was just considered basically universal fact without any challenges to it. Someone made a claim with very little data behind it, and just basically came up with an idea, more or less, or a hypothesis. In 1994, okay, it was a clinician, and that idea never really got challenged or even put to a study till 2017. All right. People assumed that this was the truth. This is the paradigm. And of course, it's actually led to a lot of problems. If you follow that paradigm, it's pretty much a recipe for failure. All right. But I'll get into that at 8 o'clock. But I mean, point is, though, it sounded good. It sounded cool. And people who are trying to make sense of a situation they're in, or a mess that they're in, or trying to make sense of the world, they'll hear something, or you'll hear something that sounds good, but then you sort of just accept it as fact because it seems to make sense to you at the time. And then boom, next thing you know, you have a belief system now, that's based on something that was never challenged. And so your paradigm is off. This is what a lot of success coaches, like my friend Rich, who will be on with it later today, myself, and a lot of different people talk about limiting beliefs. That's where limiting beliefs come from. It's a set of ideas, rules, or a paradigm, or just a reality that gets presented to you, and then you don't challenge it. All right. So I'm actually going to go back a little bit backwards so I want to talk a little bit about the video we did on Friday, where I said, basically women are designed, they're designed to kick out as many babies as they can and then end up dying at 30. All right. And some people took exception to that because there's claims out there about lifespans, and they just don't, so I got challenged on that a little bit, and that's fine. I don't mind that challenge. I need to alter the way that I explain that, apparently, because a lot of what's being said, for example, about human lifespans and life expectancies, there's a lot of myths now that are out there. Okay. When I say that their bodies are designed for them to die at 30 or whatever, not their bodies are designed to them, but their instincts are, designed for them to spit out as many. There's a sense of urgency with kicking out kids, essentially, and getting pregnant, and a sexual urgency, and that, they're dead at 30 and they're not securing long-term success till, let's say, 85 years old. That is 100% true, everything I'm saying there. Now, I'm going to go into, though, there's a bunch of claims out there, some of them being propagated by different industries and different worldviews. And so it's framing their reality and framing their research. So this is how you got to look at anything academic research is being pursued by individuals, okay, who maybe want to have scientific integrity, but their worldview and how they see the world is giving them a bias when they go into any hypothesis or any thought problem or any type of conclusion they're trying to draw, especially in things that we can't specifically put to experimentation, like looking at evolutionary biology or psychology, or, you know, studying ancient man, for example, in different disciplines that would look into that, paleoanthropology, stuff like that. I mean, it's not like chemistry. You know what I mean? I can have a bias about something and go into a chemistry experiment, but I'm going to get pretty much, if I'm dealing with chemicals, I'm going to get a result or I'm not going to get a result, right? It's pretty objective right there. But when we start going back into um, things like other disciplines, like, anthropology, for example, or evolutionary psychology or biology, well, now a person's bias can definitely cloud their conclusions. All right. So some of this is, from the health industry, this idea, this myth, there's the myth of the ancient man. Okay. Is kind of a myth that's out there, right? One myth is that these societies were peaceful, wonderful, loving, and all this stuff before technology ruined them. All right. That's one myth that's being propagated. Well, when we look at, the actual, and I point you to a book called Sapiens, all right, a evolutionary biology book, for very, very European named author. I'm not sure the author's name on that. I'll put the links of what I'm saying in the video that when it airs outside of live. Okay. I'll put it in the description, but yeah, you should look at the book Sapiens. I mean, she brings up a bunch of data showing how violent ancient societies were. Okay. They were very violent and people died early, often from, violence from another person or opposing tribe or somebody within the tribe versus dying from, medical or natural causes. I mean, it's pretty blatantly obvious when you look at the data, but there's this myth, for example, of the peaceful ancient civilizations that somehow got ruined by technology. Like somehow tribal civilizations were so much more peaceful and so much better. And then the other one is nutrition. That myth got promoted through the health and fitness industry, which is billions of dollars, by the way, that goes into that industry. And that sort of polluted academia, not just, and got into things like anthropology and stuff like that and history and those studies. But this idea that like ancient man ate so healthy, think about paleo diet. If we just ate food like our ancient ancestors, we'd be so much more healthy. That's not exactly true either. As it turns out, ancient man ate what was available. And so certain tribes and societies were very healthy, and other tribes and societies were not healthy or nutritionally balanced at all because of what was available. You know what I mean? And so it doesn't quite work exactly the way the claim is being presented, but they make a claim to support a worldview and then people just digest it. So what I mean about, I know there's this stuff. I'm going to point you to an article by a guy named John Hawkes titled "Human Lifespans Have Not Been Consistent for the Last 2,000 Years." And of course, when we're talking about evolutionary biology, we're talking the past couple 100,000 years. All right. But he discusses this issue, and you guys need to understand, again, I get these people correcting me, but you don't understand what I'm saying. There's a difference between a lifespan and a life expectancy. All right. And I didn't think I made that distinction on Friday, but when I say women are, biologically designed to spit out as many babies as possible and then be dead by about 30. That's 100% true. It has nothing to do with the human lifespan, though. It has to do with the life expectancy. Okay, the life expectancy, which is different. So people died much earlier back then than they do today. And we can look even over the past 2,000 years. People died much earlier due to health complications, due to violence and stuff like that, because of lack of medical care and a more violent and a harsher society. That's a fact. And I'll link the article. It'll demonstrate that's true. But you got to understand too, people in academia, they're always trying to make a name for themselves. They're always trying to come up with something different. So what was accepted for a long time was actually 25 years old was an accepted life expectancy for ancient man, saying, well, most people didn't live past 25. And so some geniuses came along, I say use that term sarcastically, to challenge this idea, like, listen, what we know today is that the lifespan, if the person doesn't have a disease and isn't succumb to injury, disease, or violence, yes, lifespans haven't changed that much. So there are probably certain women and men that live to be 70, in hunter-gatherer times. They found evidence of 70-year-olds with bone studies, but most of the time they're finding evidence of even just in ancient Rome, 35 was most of the bone studies showing when these people died. And again, it's not because the life span couldn't have been longer. It's just they're succumbing to death, violence, and disease. Okay. And it just makes sense, right? Now, then we want to talk about adjusting it for infancy. Well, even when we adjust it for infancy, women and men are not living to be 85 years old, which is, I think, our life expectancy right now is about that. The life expectancy was still young, about 30, not 25 necessarily, but about 30. Some show it a little bit older than 30, but not much when they try to adjust for mortality rates with infancy. Okay. And most of those studies were done just looking at the last 1,000 to 2,000 years, though, not looking back 200,000 years. All right. And you can go on the internet and find claims that ancient men lived, to 150 years old and crap like that. All right. We can find a claim for anything, but we got to look at what the evidence is and what it shows. Well, why would someone claim that someone lived to be, 150 years old? Well, those people are usually creationists and biblical literalists. Okay. And so they have a worldview that they're promoting, which is their biblical one, and it clouds what evidence or research they're bringing to the table, right? And so they're claiming ancient man lived to be hundreds of years old and stuff. All right, which we don't have any evidence for that. Okay. And so you gotta understand that people have an agenda. My agenda is to look at things neutrally and as truthfully and objectively as possible. All right, that's really my agenda. I try to remove my biases as much as I can, even though I know it's impossible to 100% do. I do it as much as possible, and then I look at the data from there. But most people don't do that, okay? So I'm not trying to come up with a conclusion of how women are in the sexual marketplace or connect dots in a positive or negative way. I'm trying to come up with what is, all right, objectively, and then we can draw conclusions from what is. That's what I do. But a lot of researchers have a lot of motivations behind it. So I mean, for example, I just because one of my nerd passions is I'm getting into Old Norse mythology and Viking mythology, and there's a lot of like feminist types that are promoting the idea that women were equal to men and women were warriors in Viking cultures, all this stuff. It's all bullshit. It's not true. None of that's true. Now, there was some evidence from burial sites of an occasional woman who was buried with like a shield or a sword or something that would indicate that there was a warrior thing going on, right? But maybe she was widowed from a warrior. All right. We can't conclude from a burial site that necessarily was a warrior. Now, what was that she was this warrior? Now, there was some writings of some individuals, but so what? We got Joan of Arc too, right? She was somebody who fought. These are statistical outliers. All right. These are not the normal society. But if I'm a feminist, you know what I mean? And I want to promote some utopian feminist society and demonstrate proof, I'm going to take some small amounts of data that showed that women had some rights, even though they did not have. It was definitely a male-driven society in Viking, Icelandic cultures, but women had some rights though. And so like they'll use that small amount of data to promote this idea, and it's just not a true idea. Okay. And so there's a lot of like motivation to promote an idea that people in hunter-gatherer times lived as long as we do today. And, because of the paleo diet, buy my paleo diet, right? Or buy my program, or because they were more physically fit. And then they come up with all these rationalizations. And it's bullcrap. It's not true. Okay. Most people succumb to disease, violence, and death. And those averages, put people right around age 30 in ancient times. That's what we're seeing. And again, I'll show you this article and read a little portion from it. In fact, it's because they were using also, Socrates, for example, living to 70 as some sort of proof because he was looking back to the last 2,000 years, but that again, that's an individual, right? It's an individual. So now, as far as the female biology goes, look, the urgency for mating exists even if, she wasn't dead at 30 and let's say died at 40 or 45, because look, the infant mortality rate was so high anyway. And this is something I didn't mention Friday too. So depending on where you were at in ancient times, babies, like infant mortality rate was between 20 and 40%. And so, if you're in the area where it's 40%, a woman spits out, 2 kids, chances are one of those kids is dead at birth or before it hits 1 year old. You know what I mean? And the other kid survives. So it still is the same thing that I said on Friday, still is the same today, regardless of what you believe about lifespan or life expectancy, just because of infant mortality. Meaning, okay, the women that survived were the ones that were promiscuous, having frequent sex, had a sense of urgency for that, and tried to bang out as many babies as possible. All right. That's still a truism. All right. Just due to infant mortality alone. And then, of course, you look at the possibilities of pregnancy. And then from, a sexual act, I think it's only one from, penetration and whatever you want to call it, when she has sex with a dude, okay, it's only 1 out of 5. It's a 1 out of 5 chance with no protection or anything, even around or circulating around ovulation, that she gets pregnant. How many people do you know who are trying to get pregnant, right? It's not the easiest task in the world. So all the things that I'm saying about female nature and all that stuff, it still holds true, even if you believe that ancient men lived to be 100 because of paleo diet and we don't know what we're talking about and whatever, because you're confounding or confusing lifespan with life expectancy. Or you read a few things. One of the things that this article I'll link is criticizing is something that was written in, what was it? Live Science magazine, which is usually pretty credible, but they made these claims in Live Science magazine. So there's some, some reasons or whatever that, academics are trying to promote some idea that the ancient people lived just as long as us. And that's just not true. The lifespan is still isn't the same. We still have a higher lifespan from what we can tell, but that's another argument. It doesn't matter whether we live to be 70 or 85 or 90, whatever the lifespan means, the possibility. Okay. So if a person didn't succumb to disease or violence or injury or whatever, the possibility of their survival, do you know what I mean? If they were taken care of and didn't have any health problems, is the same as it is today. That's the claim. And that's fine. I'll go with that. I think it actually has increased, though, a little bit through genetics, but it's only increased negligibly, like maybe by 15 or 20 years. So I think really what I had read in the stuff that I find credible, not the stuff that I don't find credible, was that the lifespan for human beings was about 70-ish if they weren't interrupted by disease, death, or, some external source. Whereas now it's about, I think it's 85 or 86. So it adjusted by about 15 years through genetics over, a couple 100,000 years. All right, whatever, that's fine. But still, though, there were a lot more deaths happening in their 30s, right? And in infancy, of course, than there are today. All right. Most people are making it to old age today. People did not by and large make it to old age back then, which meant that people were not thinking about their long-term happiness into being 85 years old, even if they could live that long or would live that long. I mean, death was right around the corner, and it was so much effort and so much more work back in ancient times just to do some of the basics. And even though they had more free time, arguably, whatever, free time than we tend to have today, but that's just because we split our focus through a lot of different activities and stuff. And they weren't going to an office and fighting through rush hour and so on and so forth. But their main goals, though, were survival. And it was a lot. It was a lot just to gather water or to procure food. It was a lot more effort than it is today for, the average person. So yeah, it was a much harder life, and people just died earlier, and that's just the way it is, which is what created that mating sense of urgency and promiscuity. What allowed those women who were like that to survive, and women today are a product of that. And so the conclusion I made on Friday, which still stays the same regardless of whether you've confounded lifespan with expectancy, is still the same, which is that, even just due to infant mortality, which is that women were spitting out as many babies as they could back then and not securing long-term happiness or health. That's what the genetic drive was towards. Okay. And that's what it still is today, what we're genetically driven towards. But, we have a need, of course, to want long-term happiness. So if a woman wants long-term happiness, she needs to understand that her drives are not going to take her there. Okay. Her female nature is not going to take her to long-term happiness. Her female nature is going to take her to destroying herself. All right. By the time she's about 30. Okay. And that conclusion remains the same regardless. I'll read this little piece though, real quick. So I'll just read this. Lady says, well, it's just not true. Okay. Referring to the claims on lifespan and life expectancy. All right. So the article says it's just not true. You can see for yourself easily with a little reading. For example, and then he cites a source, reviews the concept of and provides convenient summary figures of mortality rates by age in the U.S. for 1950 and 1995. Age-specific mortality rates have declined across the adult lifespan. A smaller fraction of adults die at 20, 30, at 40, at 50, and so on across the lifespan. As a result, we live longer on average. Reductions in juvenile and infant mortality also contribute to increased life expectancy at birth. But with the same trend is evident if we consider life expectancy at 15, 20, 30, or even 80. We live longer now than in the past. So that is from a paleoanthropologist and his article he wrote, and I will link that. That's generally, it's just misunderstood. What happened was Live Science and some of the magazines, they had to write an article. Someone had to make a name for himself. And so they confounded or confused, I guess we could say, the idea between lifespan and expectancy, because the lifespan and life expectancy are not the same. Okay. And they wrote this article that humans lived just as long back then as they do today in paleo diets. All right. Or whatever. And the reality is, yeah, the expectancy or the lifespan or possibility wasn't much different back in the day, for sure. But the expectancy, meaning mortality rates, all right, for younger people were a lot higher, meaning, more people died at 20, 100,000 years ago than today. All right. More people, really most people died before they hit 30. Okay. And it's not quite the same thing that we see today. Right. And so that's the stuff. But of course, if you're, if you have a vested interest in a certain reality or idea, where do you end up? You know what I mean? You end up coming up with, it has clouding the way you see the world. All right. So whole point, Mindset Monday is, because notice how a lot of what I'm doing is really talking about here. It's really practical stuff, right? We're not getting this like success porn, hoorah, BS. This is all stuff that you do. And when you do it, you can really affect, your long-term outcomes and everything with behavioral modification, right? And so on. So one of those things is just to be challenging to paradigms when they're presented to you. Most of you guys who are in the chat right now understand the difference between blue pill and red pill. Well, in that idea of a sexual marketplace, what was blue pill, right? Blue pill was a set of ideas that were presented to you. And if you didn't challenge those ideas, where did it lead you? you know and of course those ideas were not exactly true, right? They were confounded, and they were twisted around from some things that were accurate, and some things that were not true or not accurate at all got put in there, and you ended up with this entire paradigm or worldview that was just incorrect, and that would lead you to your demise, right? And so we have to challenge ideas when they present themselves. We have to challenge things. If I see some article that makes a claim, okay, that lifespan, that acts as if lifespans and life expectancies are the same things, and claims that we lived, or some article that claims that ancient man lived a lot longer back then than we do today. We just didn't know that. That's okay. Well, that's your claim. I'm going to have to challenge that. I'm not going to take that for face value because I like the person who wrote it or I like the source, and so it's tough. It's tough nowadays to get what's true out there. I haven't looked at your guys' chat, so I'm going to start looking at these now before I end it. And then we can all come together again on Rich's channel. All right. So agreed. All right, sweet. Yeah, you can, whatever. Yeah, there's always going to be somebody who thinks that ancient man, they probably believe in Atlantis too, and they probably believe the Bible stories about dudes living to be, several hundred years old and all that, and not realizing that there might be a little hyperbole involved in those stories, right? Yeah, before antibiotics, simple infection could kill even young, healthy people fast. Yeah, exactly. Again, that made for a sense of urgency for survival, one that we don't experience today. And that's the point. The big difference is there was, even 100 years ago, there was more of a sense of urgency, depending on where you were in the world and taking care of your survival needs, than there is today. Okay. And so that affects that affected how we evolutionarily developed with our sexual strategies. All right. And some of those things that we developed might not secure our long-term happiness, okay, today. All right. But it would have helped us survive, or at least our species survive back then. Yeah. So no, I don't know about what you mean by energy is feminine. No, it was a very masculine society, actually, and they really valued masculinity. And most of the stories of Nordic gods and their things were involving the masculine. There's quite a lot of stuff, and there's quite a lot of stuff, and masculinity was definitely honored. I don't know about energy. I don't know. I wouldn't say, I mean, because when you read the actual poems and the sagas and different stuff, I mean, energy being feminine, I'm not so sure about that, but I know that masculinity was definitely in, but I'm not. Talk to someone who's an expert. I'm just reading about it now. So, but I mean, yeah, it's contrary to popular belief, it was very masculine society. Okay. Not so much now if you go in some of these places, but back then. Let's see if you guys got any questions, fire them off because I'm reading the chat. How's my day is going? Really well. Been extremely jam-packed schedule today though. So I'm just now getting on because I've been busy like all day. That's good though. Got guys arguing. That's fun. What are your thoughts on getting an apartment with a girlfriend? Been together for almost 2 years, but my gut tells me it's not something I want to do. We're both 29 years old. Well, I mean, you do what you want to do, Scott. All right. Now, some people are going to tell you that moving in, man, my hair is like poofed out today. I'm just like, woo. All right. But some people are going to tell you that never to cohabitate with a woman. And I can understand why they have that point of view. It's much harder to maintain frame with a chick when you cohabitate with her. So cohabitation can be a challenge for most people. All right. Now, it's not a challenge for me. I cohabitate with my LTR. It's not even close to a challenge. In fact, it's better that we cohabitate versus not. And I maintain frame just fine in my household. However, I'm not exactly new at this thing. All right. So I've been at it for a while and figuring stuff out for a while. In fact, I teach other men how to do frame control and stuff like that. And that'll be a course coming up here soon. So for me to do it, cool. For you to do it, maybe not, but just know that you're going to have a lot more challenges if you decide to move in with this person, and it's going to be frame challenges. Okay. If you do it, I recommend that you have an exit strategy already set out beforehand. Do not combine things like finances, putting your name on a lease with her, okay, and do those things without having an exit strategy. When I say exit strategy, I mean doesn't require going to court. So if you need to draw up, people who want to do the marriage thing need to do prenups, for example, need to have legal documents drawn up. You may not have to do that just when it comes to cohabitating in an apartment situation. Understand, of course, I'm not a legal expert, so take it with a grain of salt here, but you need to have the exit strategy. So, for example, I live with my LTR here, right? Maintain frame, everything's good. But if shit goes south, I have a second home that I can bail out to. I can pack a bag and walk out the door, no questions asked, grab, come back maybe later that week with a moving truck, grab all my shit, and it's done. Don't ever have to look at her ever again if I don't want to. Okay. That's how abrupt my exit strategy is. Not saying it would be easy to do that on an emotional, mental level. Never is, right? But logistically, it's that simple. And so that's what you need to set yourself up with. You do not put yourself in a scenario where, where you're cohabitating and you don't have a way out, because then you're not going to maintain frame too well. All right. I think a key component of maintaining frame is to know that you always have the option to leave. All right. And she knows that you always have the option to leave. It's not that you would do that, but that you have that option. You're staying voluntarily. All right. Not staying out of necessity. That's what's really important. So if you're moving in with her, you're doing it out of necessity. Is it because you need a roommate? You're not financially stable on your own? Don't do it then. Move in with the buddy. Okay. If you financially are stable on your own, can handle it yourself, and you decide to do that because it's a better complement to your life, that's cool. You are 29. Understand too, your sexual market value is not going to be at its peak for probably another 5 or 6 years. So keep that in mind as well. All right. So I'm not going to tell you not to do it. There's a lot of reasons not to do it. I'll let the guys in the chat chime in and in the comments later, because they will tell you not to do it and give you all the reasons. All right. I'm not necessarily going to have to do that for you, but there are going to definitely be some challenges. If you're looking for my permission to do it, no, you don't have my permission. Dump her, spin plates, blah, blah, blah. Right. I'm just messing with you, of course. All right. No, I'm not giving you, you don't have my permission. You don't have but you don't not have my permission either. Okay. The whole point is frame control. If you can maintain frame with your chick, you can do anything you want, but do it. If you're not doing it because you want to, then you already lost frame. All right. So that's what the key to it all is. All right. Let's keep going here. Would you not agree that some prior parenting attributes poor parenting attributes? Well, yeah, sure. Absolutely. Environment has a lot to do with things. It's not all genetics. Is it genetic or is it environment? How people are going to turn out? It's both, right? Genetics just points to a potential, but we have potential to go in different ways. Throw shades on. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Sure. That guy's an idiot. Well, that sounds bad. Maybe I shouldn't talk bad about people, right? But yeah, that guy has like no credentials or clue or ideas of what's going on in the sexual marketplace. His paradigm's completely flawed. It's just garbage. It's not even worth addressing, even though it was completely popular. But then that's another great example, right? I mean, you got this dude writing a book and was wildly popular, made millions of dollars off of people just peddling stuff that doesn't work regarding the sexual marketplace. But it sounded good and people didn't challenge it. And so then it became a thing. And of course, it's not, right? If you follow some of these blue-pilled paradigm stuff when it comes to female nature relationship, you're really going to set yourself up for failure and a long struggle. Some tips on how to stop ruminating over work. Yep. Oof, that's a long. All right. So yeah, how to not ruminate is you have to take the quickest tip I'll give you here is you got to take mental breaks. I'm going to do that after this video. Okay. I got a show later tonight. I've had consultations all day. I got more stuff happening between now and the show at 8 o'clock. If I don't take a break and a mental break and detox and decompress, I'm not going to be at my best when I show up at 8 o'clock for that show. So how do you, instead of ruminating over projects, that is a lack of outcome independence, and that demonstrates anxiety. And then the sense of urgency is causing you to not take the mental breaks that you need to take. The project that you have is going to be there. Okay. It's going to be there after a 30-minute meditation session. All right. All your problems will still be there. The difference is you'll have more clarity and you'll be able to handle it. And not only that, you'll be able to handle it more productively. So here's the thing. So we're talking about production now, being more productive. When you are overwhelmed, okay, we'll call it just being overwhelmed. You're ruminating about projects, things you need to do, things you need to accomplish. It's like so much, right? It's just coming at you. Puts you in an anxious state. Your brain waves hit a mid to high beta state, so very erratic, okay, if you were to run it under a scanner. And you're, anxious, nervous, and about stuff, and you don't want to take a break, right? You don't want to, it just consumes everything you're doing. You're having dinner with your chick or your family, and you're ruminating and just thinking about all this stuff, right? It's putting you in a survival mode, an emergency mode. And the thing is, more work and hitting that work harder isn't going to make that go away. All right. Not necessarily, unless it's different if you've procrastinated and you have a project that's like due tomorrow, and now you're going to kick it all in the effort to get it done, and that anxiety powers you through it, whatever. But that's an event though, right? And that's not a constant state. If your constant state is busy and ruminating and anxious, then we have to, then getting work done actually isn't going to help you. It's only going to make you create more things to do or look at more things that need to be done, because there's always an endless amount of things that need to be done depending on what your profession is, and ruminate and get more anxious. So the activity, without a break can cause more anxiety. All right. And so you have to break from that. You have to change your state and do a mental and emotional state break. Okay. And you do this by changing your environment and changing your focus and your mental and your emotional state. You have to actually break. You're anxious and you're thinking about all this stuff. You have to break that. Okay. So how you do that is that you shut off all the distractions, and you take 5, 10, 20, 30. And this is what meditative exercise is for. It makes you more outcome independent. All right. Outcome independence is the key to being that apex alpha and having an alpha mindset. All right. All the work and all the stress will be there when you return. I don't want to say stress, because you won't be as stressed, but all of the activities that you need to do will still be there. The difference is, though, you'll be more efficient and you'll be better equipped to handle those things. And so you'll get those things off your to-do list much more efficiently and faster. And that's the biggest thing, is that if you force yourself, or you start taking these mental breaks, it's going to feel like, I can't do this. I can't take 30 minutes right now to take this break. Or I can't go work on it. People who don't work out, for example, I don't have time to go to the gym. I don't have time, right? they're not taking that break, right? Because it feels too overwhelming to do it. But when they take the breaks in the appropriate way and they maximize their productivity when they're on task, what they find is that they got more done. And so behaviorally, when you do it for a few weeks and you see that you're getting better results with less time invested because you're taking the breaks you need to take, then you'll start to see that this is the way to go and you won't have that resistance. You'll realize that taking the breaks that you need to take are a requirement for being highly productive and successful. All right. And so that's my advice to you on that. So you have to and I recommend to time block and chunk your time. So if you're doing something really grueling and like you can't focus on it for more than 20 minutes, then that's your time chunk right there. But shoot for an hour to an hour and a half of focused activity. What that means is no distraction. You're not getting up to piss. You're not refilling your water. You're not refilling your coffee. You're not talking to the cute chick who works at the front desk. You're not getting sidetracked and playing on Facebook or social media. Save my video for a later time, for example, so on and so forth, right? You're doing focused work without distractions, and then you take your break, and that's where you allow your mind to flow, and you allow yourself to be distracted and to do whatever you want. You grab that coffee, talk to the cute chick, you know what I mean? Whatever, scroll look at your Facebook page, whatever. You take that 10-minute break, and then you go back to it. Maybe it's a 15-minute break. All right. So you're taking breaks at least every hour to hour and a half. Okay. Between 10 and 20 minutes. And then you're taking time in the beginning or middle or end of the day for doing short meditation sessions. This is where you do mindfulness meditation. You remove all distractions. That's hard for you to do. Throw on some binaural beats or tonal music and hit that, because that'll help activate parts of your brain so that you're not just like sitting in your own thoughts. You know what I mean? You could do mindfulness focusing on one particular thing, something as simple as this coffee mug, you know what I mean? And just focus on all the details of that and exclude everything else. There's different ways of doing it, but the idea is you're getting rid of all of this distractions, all the thoughts, and all of those things that are stacking in your brain. It's a complete decompress. And when you do that every single day for certain periods of the day, and again, even just 10 minutes a couple times a day is going to make a huge difference. That's going to help you to not ruminate over stuff. It'll help your mental focus. It'll help you to not be distracted all the time. So then when you're on specific tasks, for example, enjoying dinner with your family or whatever it may be, you're not going to be ruminating over things that you need to do work on, because you've practiced having that focused attention and that having that presence, being in the present moment. There's a lot more to it, but that's the begin advice, is start taking these breaks. Okay. That's my beginning advice on that one. I got to go. So I'm sorry if I didn't get to your questions. Hit me up another time and we'll do things. All right. Yeah, because there's a lot more of them. So if I didn't get to your questions, guys, I'm gonna have to do it next time. But I'm doing this every Monday sometime in the day. So that's the goal. Anyway, so Mindset Monday, challenge the reality. Okay. Challenge your reality that somebody else is presenting you. Challenge the reality that you believe in. All right. Do that periodically. Look at the data and look at the things, because a lot of the things that gets promoted and put out there is a lot of BS. Those of you guys who went from blue pill to red pill know exactly what I'm talking about. You had a bunch of paradigms that were presented to you. You accepted it without question, and it led you to a place that you didn't want to be. So always challenge stuff. Try to see things in it with neutrality and objectivity. And then, of course, we can put our action plans and thoughts, feelings, ideas on those things from there. All right. Thanks again for the support, guys. See you at 8 o'clock, maybe, hopefully, over at Rich's channel. Take care.